Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about when we build our campaigns, content has consequences, and I think this is a lesson coming out of House of the Dragon. There are spoilers for House of the Dragon in this, the entire season, and it's important that we understand that there is a bridge too far. You need to, when we are in charge of setting up the pins for the player characters to knock down, and we have to restrain ourselves and not go too far. And if we go too far, there will be consequences. Okay, content has consequences, and I think House of Dragon shows this perfectly. Okay, so let's jump into this. All right, so first of all, every single Dungeon Master's world is changed now. We are in a fundamentally new time. So the people who are going to be showing up at our tables, right, they're coming from a new era in American fantasy. And that is the key. It's American fantasy. When it comes to fantasy, America is deciding what matters. Okay? So let's talk about fantasy, right? So J.K. Rowling had a nice, cute little period in time where she impacted fantasy for the world, right? And then she was like, hey, I know y'all all love my books, but let me scree a whole bunch of stuff that has nothing to do with the books and makes everybody furious and makes people who have tattoos of my characters on their arms want to get them lasered off, right? So J.K. Rowling forfeited the crown, right? And we back to American fantasy being all that matters, okay? And so right now, relevant fantasy is Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, has millions of viewers. House of the Dragon has millions of viewers, right? And when people show up at our table, that's the bar, right? They're like, hey, I just watched Rings of Power. I just watched House of the Dragon. I heard y'all's in D&D can give me content while there's no new content up, right? That you can scratch that American fantasy itch I have, right? And you can put me in any fantasy world you can put me in another fantasy world that's just as cool as Rings of Power, just as cool as House of Dragon. Get to it, Dungeon Master. And they're right. So that's the bar. All right. So just be aware. If you think your table's the same, it ain't. Okay. There's new expectations. Matthew Mercer changed Dungeons and Dragons forever. And the simultaneous launch of season 1 of Lord of the Rings, and House of the Dragon has put Dungeons and Dragons in a tremendous new position to fulfill the fantasy needs of an entire generation, right? Oh, and I forgot, we got millions coming in from Stranger Things, and when Stranger Things brings its season 5, there's going to be millions more new players coming in, right? Dungeons and Dragons is perfectly, at minimum, hundreds of thousands of new players. And I think 2 million players, that's millions, is not. I would not be surprised if season 4 brought 2 million players alone, right? And I think I wouldn't be surprised if House of the Dragon brought 2 million players to Dungeons and Dragons, and I would not be surprised at all if Rings of Power did not bring 2 million. So we could be bringing in 6 million new players. And what's our current base? Last count was about 11 million for everybody who plays Dungeons and Dragons in the world. These are big numbers, right? And so, this is very real, all right? So what do we learn specifically from House of the Dragon? Okay, so Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power comes out, and they're like, hey, check this out. You loved Lord of the Rings. Here's your Gandalf. His name isn't Gandalf. It's called the Stranger. Whatever, right? Here's your Harfoots. They're your hobbits, right? Here's your orcs. They're itchy at sunlight now, and here's Durin. And hey, did you think the dwarves were cool? Now check this out. Get to see the dwarves actually doing mining. Get to see the dwarves' home life. It's amazing, right? And it really raised the bar really big, right? But it also made sure it was family friendly. They're like, hey, you're here. You want to see a cool fantasy story? Hey, do you want to watch with your son? You want to watch with your daughter? Who's any age they are. Bring them into the room. You can watch this as a family, right? House of the Dragon's like, nah, we don't need family friendly entertainment. They're like, we got the dopest fantasy world ever, right? But it would be really good to put in here? What if the main character, Rhaenyra, were to marry her father's brother? Wouldn't that be cool? No, that is super not cool. Super not cool. It does not make the show better, and it makes it absolutely inaccessible to anybody 18 years or younger, right? Like, or 17 years or younger. Completely inaccessible, right? Even beyond that, regular humans are like, you really should not marry your father's brother. That's like super yucky, like really yucky, right? And so you're like, why did we put this in there? That's super gross, right? Oh, and wait, they had kids? That's even grosser. Like, that is just the most gross, super yucky, ooh, yuck ever, right? And there are like, people are like, I'm Team Rhaenyra. Well, what part of this show did you not watch? Like, you can't be Team Rhaenyra. Like, these are not defensible actions by anyone on the planet, right? Like, this is not, like, this is super gross to any normal human, right? Like, it's just... So, and here's the thing. This is why Rings of Power is going to win, right? Rings of Power, House of the Dragon, Season 1, Episode 10. The first Dance of Dragons, right? Aemon murders Lucerys by having, and Vhagar chomps Arrax in half, Lucerys dies, and Aemon sparks the war that will be in Season 2, right? An amazing scene, and that one scene is better than anything in Rings of Power. No two ways about it. Frankly, it's better than anything that's been on the small screen in 50 years. Like, it is the bar for action in fantasy going forward, right? But Rings of Power is still going to beat it, right? And the reason why is you cannot put people forward in stories who make completely undefensible actions that are super gross and super yucky, right? And so the reality is you're never going to have a House of the Dragon theme park, right? You're like, oh, this is the part of the, like, cause you can't hide that, right? It's a main character, right? And it's super gross. It's really bad, right? And so the lesson here is there's a limit. There is a limit, right? You have got to be very careful what you allow in your game. Do not ever follow the House of the Dragon writers down this road. This is going to cost them billions, and I'll tell you right now too. The reason you're seeing this is, take a look. Rings of Power, that has a 5-year contract. There will be 5 seasons by contract with the Tolkien estate. There's going to be 5 seasons of it, right? House of the Dragon is on HBO Max, and the streaming service itself is questionable if it'll even exist within 2 years, right? Discovery, Grace Randolph is talking openly that Discovery is thinking about stripping HBO Max and Warner Brothers and selling the whole thing for parts, right? So, and that's because, and that's my entire point. Content has consequences. This was a huge problem in House of the Dragon. It should have never been there, and it's a guarantee that Rings of Power comes out the winner in the House of the Dragon discussion, right? As Dungeon Masters, PG-13. Keep it PG-13, man. Do not go with cable grading, right? People talk about safety tools. The best Dungeons & Dragons safety tool in the world for you is PG-13. You're never going to find a PG-13 film that is like, what if this person married their father's brother? Oh, and what if they had kids? Really? It's like, it is super yucky. Like, this is the super yuckiest. And it just really makes it hard to root for House of the Dragon, right? However, facts are facts. Aemon murdering Lucerys, that's a dope scene, right? Like, and it was worth the journey, but this was a daggers out battle between House of the Dragon and Rings of Power, and that one choice guarantees Rings of Power wins this battle. So as we go forward, I think it's all, and it's already, we already see evidence of this. It's already in Nielsen ratings are in. Rings of Power is literally getting more viewers than House of the Dragon, because it just totally makes sense. You could share Rings of Power with anyone. You can't even recommend House of the Dragon. Like, you're like, here's House of the Dragon. I don't really back everything that's in this. It's weird. Like, and so as you go forward, remember, there's a limit. Make sure you don't go over that line. And here's the other thing. You are responsible to make sure none of your players go over that line too. All that's my humble opinion. I'm eager to hear yours. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.